Welcome to the party, pal. This is Fountainhead Forum 32. I have Bill from Bitcoin Island in the Philippines, and we're going to talk about the Philippines and all things related to getting people to use Bitcoin out there or whatever, and getting out of the corrupt financial systems that we've been having really since the beginning of finance and money. How are you, Bill?
Oh, I'm excellent.
So tell me, how did you get started with all this Bitcoin stuff? And how
Ah,
did you end up here in the Philippines?
so like most people, the first time you encounter Bitcoin really doesn't matter because it's like the Matrix. No one makes that jump off the building on the first try. So what's really more important is the second time that you run into Bitcoin. And for me, that's when I was living in the Philippines as an expat from the United States. I had quickly gone through the evolution of money transfers. The very first money that I sent to the Philippines was via one of the traditional remittance corridors, and it was not a great experience. Then, when I moved here, I went to an online version of it. That was not particularly good either, but it was better than the other option. And I went through a variety of options to fund myself over here. Eventually, I got a gig work where the people wanted to pay me in Bitcoin. And I was like, oh, yeah, I remember that. Let me check it out, see if I can, cash that out over here in the Philippines. And it turns out I could, but I wanted to know a little bit more about it. And as I was reading on it, I saw that it had a utility that solved exactly the problem I was having, which is remittances from the United States to the Philippines.
Yeah, that is one of the virtues of Bitcoin is it has made international transfer a lot easier, and you can transfer large amounts of money. It usually goes pretty quick. I don't know if the fees are any better. So your first encounter with Bitcoin was when, and your second encounter was when?
Um, uh, I think the first time it was probably not this bull run, but the one before. And I was actually turned off because of the bull run, because I would be at groups of people and they were checking their phone every 30 seconds and screaming out the value of Bitcoin and 23 other shit coins out there. And this just gave me a really foul view of Bitcoin because these people were just gambling, quite honestly. And
Yeah,
so I wrote it off. Now that's too bad because I come from a very hardcore libertarian standpoint. So I was already primed with the Austrian economics and everything else. My first book that I ever bought off of Amazon was Bruce Schneier's Applied Cryptography. I read that recreationally. So I was definitely primed for this, but because of all the gambling mentality that came from the shitcoin casino that I was witnessing, I really just wrote it off when I first heard of it.
yeah. So that would have been the 2017 bull market, I guess.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Okay, yeah. The 2000, yeah, that was yeah, that would have been the that would definitely that was yeah, that was because we had the 21 bull market. Yeah, but you were a libertarian in an Austrian into the Austrian School of Economics. So that when was that exactly? What books did you first
Oh,
brought you into
the very
libertarian and
first
Austrian economics?
that would have been 95 when I first found out that there was a name for what I believed called libertarianism. The first book that influenced me and told me that other people believe this was Peter McWilliams' book, Ain't Nobody's Business If You Do, with a subtitle of The Absurdity of Consensual Crimes in Our, quote, Free Country.
Yes, Peter McWilliams. Rest his soul. Largely killed by the government because of the various things that happened. That was a very tragic and unfortunate death.
It
I've, I,
was.
I've not heard of anybody coming to libertarianism through that book, but he certainly got a lot of attention with that book. I mean, took marijuana to help his nausea because he had AIDS, and then it ended up. I don't know what exactly. I know the deaths if he'd not been prosecuted by all the government, he'd probably still be alive. But it's hard to say for sure. But yeah, that was a bit.
I believe that also. If you were you at the Libertarian Convention in 1996 in DC?
No, I didn't make LP national, unfortunately, until 2022. That was the first time I made it. But yeah,
Okay,
or
Peter
actually,
was
no, I was at 2020. Sorry, but I never made it to LP national until 2020. I'm kind of embarrassed to say that, but that's my
Peter
story.
was on live national television giving
Yeah,
a speech when he needed to toke up, and so he toked up on national television and then held it up in the air like the Statue of Liberty. I was running security that day, and so we were scrambling to make sure we could get him out of the building if necessary.
that's a great story. Yeah, I mean, it's a yeah. I got my first event, libertarian event, was actually a seminar at the Foundation for Economic Education back in '94, and then I matriculated to other things. I interned at Liberty Magazine for 6 months, and got involved with some other groups. And I finally got off my butt and started a podcast. And of course, I didn't really get into Bitcoin at all until 2020, but because I heard, hey, this block halving is going to come up, you better get into it now. The block halvings have certainly been what has fueled the bull runs. Seems like it's a pretty consistent 4-year cycle right now. But anyway, yeah. Anyway, so that was that when I got into libertarianism. Yeah, it's been an interesting time. So anyway, so you got into you were into Austria. So did you have a background in finance before this, or did you work in economics, or what were you doing back in the 90s and the aughts before the Bitcoin?
Oh, I was still in college at that point.
Okay. I'm sure that was an adventure. Which college was that? Was it pretty socialist? I suppose it was.
No, it was an engineering school. It was not a what you would consider a liberal campus. Legend had it we were one of the only campuses that protested for the Vietnam War.
Really?
That's urban legend, but I think it gives you an idea of the campus there. So
it wasn't Texas A&M, was it?
No, it was not. So
you don't want to say what it was, I guess, but
yeah. So college was fine, and we found like-minded people there. Tried the college activism thing. Kind of gave up on it at some point.
So you actually ended up in the Philippines before you got into Bitcoin. What took you to the Philippines in the first place?
So I'm a big advocate of financial independence, retire early. So I was basically dropped out of the world pretty early in my career, and at some point I'm reading all the different lists of the best places to retire early, and the Philippines is always in the top 3 of any of these lists. So I came over here for a 6-month trial, and I really just forgot to leave.
Very interesting. So what did you? So when was that? What did you consult exactly? I mean, what magazines, like International Living or?
No, I just would Google up the variety of different fire blogs that are out there, whether it's Mr. Money Mustache or whoever it is. But this whole community, it didn't take very long to get everything that you can get out of that community. Essentially, it says spend less than you earn, and everything else is an elaboration on that concept.
Yeah, I just everybody's looking for different things though, in what country they move to. I mean, do you learn? I mean, I've heard Philippines, for example, is a lot of people do speak English there, I guess.
Oh, very much so.
Yeah, and so that's one thing. I mean, do you want to learn a new language, or and do you and then you have the expats who really just hide away within the expat communities, but then you have other people who really get out there and live within the country and live with the people. But Obviously, the
Yeah,
Philippines.
I have purposely avoided the expat community. I've not really spent any time in that community.
Yeah, I've heard different things about this. I've heard the expat communities in Mexico were absolutely horrible during COVID. They were all saying, "Oh, we got to shut down Mexico and all this stuff." And Mexico really was never really that bad on COVID. So when did you end up in the Philippines?
I've been here for 3 years now.
Okay, so you ended up in the Philippines before 2017 then, or not after 2017, or
Yes.
where were you trying to do you were talking about doing these international money transfers. Where were you doing these international money transfers?
I was living in Manila at the time.
So you were so so you were living in the Philippines, but you said 3 years, which would have been 2020. So that would have been
Yeah, I said 2020. You said 2017.
well 2017. You mentioned the bull markets. So was it during 2021 that you got into Bitcoin then, or
Yes. The second time that I saw Bitcoin was when I was living in the Philippines 3 years ago.
okay? Okay, so that's when. So you're not. So you've not really been into Bitcoin that long, at least compared to a lot of other people.
Yeah. I I guess it depends on your peer group, but yes.
Yeah, yeah. So unlike the people who got into Bitcoin when it was less than $100, and of course, there's a lot of people. A lot of people nowadays, claim, well, yeah, I had a lot of Bitcoin back in 2013, but then I sold it, and yeah, whatever. I wonder how many.
It doesn't matter what you had. It matters what you keep.
Yeah. Well, yeah, there's always a lot. Well, anybody can say they had something at one time, that's my point. So, how'd you get hooked up with this pouch? You're involved with this pouch app that's
Yeah.
facilitating a lot of Bitcoin transactions, and there's this island called Bitcoin Island. That's one island in the Philippines. What's the name of that island?
So that's Boracay. It is a world-class tourist destination here in the Philippines. It's a white sand beach. It's about
Yeah,
10 square kilometers, but most
yeah,
of the activity is along one long beach.
yes, that's Boracay, which is Boracay. Do they get a lot of tourists there? I guess.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Is it pretty easy to get there, or does it? I suppose you at least gotta. They don't have international flights, but can you get there directly from Manila, or
There are international flights, but that's a bit of an overstatement because it's only one from Taipei. The rest are basically coming from the major cities inside the Philippines, which would mostly be Manila and Cebu.
okay, Manila and Cebu, yeah. So
And so
yeah,
when you fly into Boracay, you're actually flying into the mainland that is within sight of the island.
okay,
You can then just take a quick shuttle to the ferry, and the ferry will have you over to the island in about 10 minutes.
okay. So yeah, so it's like you said. So you only get to the island by ferry. That's interesting, but it's how long's the ferry ride?
It's about 10 minutes.
Okay, so that's ferry. Oh, well, yeah, that's probably not more than maybe 3 or 4 kilometers, I guess, isn't it? It's probably not too
Yeah,
far at all then. Yeah.
no, it's not very far at all. You can
Yeah.
easily see the mainland and the island from each other.
Yeah. And you probably got people who have maybe even have their own boats, or you could even go on that far. You could probably even use a jet ski.
Oh, you could definitely make it on a jet ski. I don't
Yeah.
think that's encouraged, but some of the higher end resorts actually have speedboats that will pick you up and directly drop you
Yeah.
off at the hotel.
Yeah. Yeah, that'd be cool. I wonder, is there an Uber for boats? Like in the Philippines? That's an
Um,
idea.
yeah, most people just jump on the ferry. There's one leaving every 10 minutes.
Oh wow,
So,
yeah. Do people bring? Is this what Is this are there cars on this island, or is it all just people walking on foot and maybe bicycles?
it is very, very much electric vehicle The vast
Okay.
majority of vehicles on the island are electric golf cart things.
Okay.
So that those are all public transportation. You just pay like 15 pesos, like 30 cents for a shared ride, or 150 pesos, about $3 for a private ride.
So okay. So the Philippine currency is the peso, much like Mexico and Colombia and Argentina and a few other countries.
Yeah,
And it's a generally a good rule that every country that there are no good pesos in the world, from what I hear too. They're all basically shit coins. At least at least compared to other currencies which are a little more stable. Is the Philippine peso pretty stable, or is it pretty much like the other ones?
it's bopped around. I believe when I first got here, it was at 48 to the dollar, and now, like most fiat currencies, it's gone soft versus the US dollar, and it's now at like 55 ish.
Okay.
So in my mind, I still just round it to 50 for easier math.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a lot easier math. I agree. Yeah, it's not really not really much of a not really the yeah, it's a but it's out. So what made you pick this island out of I mean, cuz Philippines you got thousands of islands.
Oh well, this is my fourth location in the Philippines, so I do keep mobile over the years. But I came here specifically for the Bitcoin Island project.
Yeah. How'd you get involved in this?
So on Reddit, I was on the Bitcoin forum, and I believe some troll was saying there's no use for Bitcoin, and I explained that the vast majority of my spending was actually coming from buying Bitcoin in America and then bringing it to the Philippines and using that as a route to do my own international remittances to myself. And I explained why this was superior to everything else that was out there. At that point, Ethan, the CEO of Pouch.ph, the Lightning wallet, is contacted me. We had a phone call and quickly realized that both were competent people that get things done. So he invited me to check out Boracay and see if I thought I could turn this into Bitcoin Island.
Oh wow! So you've been so basically you've been going out and encouraging these places to adopt Bitcoin using the Pouch wallet.
Yes, absolutely. And we've had great success. We have 250 businesses on this tiny island that accept Bitcoin today.
That is, and how many businesses overall?
It is hard to tell. I I'm not even going to hazard a guess, but if I had to, 4,000.
Okay,
Businesses
so
are much smaller and less well defined here than in the West.
but 250 businesses out of 4,000, so that would be one out of 16. So that's certainly decent adoption. I mean, obviously you want to try to go for more. You said it's the smaller businesses that are accepting Bitcoin.
No, we've got a good mix. We purposely have gotten the tiniest of Filipino businesses. There's a concept here called a sari sari. It is a little convenience store so small that the owner is inside and just hands you whatever it is that you want. So those are everywhere in the Philippines. I would wager that there's nowhere in the Philippines you can stand and not see one of these businesses. So there are tiny businesses everywhere. We've got about 100 businesses on that scale. And then we've got a lot of tourist businesses, the things that when you come here as a tourist, you're likely to use, like restaurants,
Yeah.
bars, hotels, haircuts, services, water sports, coffee houses, things like that.
When I travel, I've never been to the Philippines, but when I travel to Mexico, I'm always impressed by the amount of micro businesses that I see in Mexico. I mean, a business that you could start for maybe $1,000 or $2,000. Like maybe
Absolutely.
like maybe a restaurant, but a restaurant that is maybe the size of a 2-car garage,
Oh,
or
that
also
big?
or food trailers. You probably got a lot of food trailers there. Not
Yes.
really restaurants, but just food trailers where somebody might just maybe makes tacos out of the food trailers. Well, I don't know if they have tacos in the Philippines, but uh, and little things like that. But businesses that you don't see many businesses like that in America, and it's kind of sad, really. Uh,
Yes,
another
those are absolutely everywhere. And I laughed when you said a 2-car garage because that would be a massive one here.
yeah, but that
They're
would be a
called
very
car.
small restaurant in America. That would be a very
Yes.
small restaurant in America. Yeah, I mean
So
maybe
the
yeah,
concept is called carinderias, and so someone will make dinner and lay it out in a pan, and you can come by for about $1, get a bowl of rice and whatever's cooking right there. So those are very popular. When I first got to the Philippines, I ate exclusively in those for like the first month or two.
yeah, and it's probably really good food. I mean, what are some of the some of the more popular Filipino dishes that I should get when I go there? I assume being islands, there's probably a lot of fish there, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of fish. There is pork adobo is definitely, or chicken adobo is going to be one of the classics
Yeah,
that every Filipino is going to mention.
yeah. So it's pretty easy to start a business like this in the Philippines, then I guess.
Yeah, and you were right on the price point.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you don't really see an American business get started. You just don't see these little businesses like this in America. And I wonder. It's almost like maybe there's so much red tape or regulations that you have to go into to start these businesses, and maybe you just don't have that in the Philippines or Mexico. Uh,
There's definitely red tape in the Philippines, but I think it is lesser than
yeah,
in America. And I think there's a certain level of, what would you call it, development, where these tiny businesses become less and less um, viable, and America has long past uh, went past that line.
yeah, maybe so. It's just interesting though. You see so many of these little businesses in
And I also believe that the car culture of America really cuts down on the small businesses. Here, I haven't had a vehicle in 3 years, and I haven't missed it at all. And so when you walk anywhere, you're going through a neighborhood, and all these tiny businesses are right there for you.
I wonder if that's probably a factor too. And as a result, though, you probably go out and get your groceries and stuff, more in small, like one bag at a time, and that's a bag that you can just carry home, as opposed to the way we do things here. You go out to the grocery store once a week and fill up your car with groceries and then take it home. Because
Yes.
that's what I always ask people when I see people who don't have cars. That's always the first question I ask them is, how do you shop for groceries? But
Well,
anyway,
I didn't have a car when I was
yeah.
living in America for a long time either. Just I was a full time motorcycle guy,
Oh
and
yeah.
yeah, so I actually just ended up doing home grocery delivery because
Oh yeah.
motorcycles are not particularly good grocery getters.
Oh yeah, definitely. That's yeah. Motorcycles have their purpose, but yeah, there's not really yeah, home grocery delivery stuff like that. Where were you living in America?
I was in Las Vegas.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, there's a yeah, Las Vegas probably is a place where it'd be fairly easy to you get things like that. And I think you can probably survive carless in Las Vegas too pretty easily if you really want to, but depends a lot on where you are. So yeah, so anyway, so what else? What's the educational? What's the process like of convincing these businesses to get on Bitcoin? I mean, what do you got to do here? You got to go up and
Oh,
approach them, or
absolutely. This is
tell
what
us all about this. Yeah, how do you
this is this
sell Bitcoin to these people?
yeah, this is one of my most in demand topics because as far as Bitcoin communities go, we have had great success with 250 in 7 months. That is really quite impressive. And I have to admit that we have an unfair advantage in that we have fiat rails in the wallet that we are onboarding people with. So, being in America, you're familiar with Strike. Is that correct?
Stripe, yeah, that's
Strike.
one of those credit card
No,
payment systems.
Strike.
Oh, Strike. No, I'm not Strike. No, the only Strike. 10 pins in bowling or baseball, you swing and
Ah,
miss.
oh,
What's this?
so
What's this? Yeah.
oh, then this is your lucky day. So Strike, Pouch, and Coin Corner are all three that I'm going to describe at the same time because they have the same concept behind them. So they allow you to connect a bank account and then load fiat in. And whenever you want to pay with Bitcoin, it is a Lightning wallet and you can send it out immediately. And this greatly simplifies the exchange process because it's just connected to your bank account. And when you want Bitcoin, it will buy it immediately and send it to whoever is receiving it. From a tax standpoint, technically, you are paying with Bitcoin, but never owned it. So that can make things a lot easier also, because what happens is any of these are a payment processor, which will send that Bitcoin over Lightning to whoever you are paying on your behalf.
So yeah, so that makes it a lot simpler because it's never technically a taxable event, so to speak. So yeah, it's so that's very interesting. So Strike is one of those apps that does this. Yeah, I
Yeah,
was
their market is America, and Coin Corner is Europe plus the United Kingdom, and we've got we've got the Philippines.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Sounds good. Yep, you've got the Philippines. So yeah, uh, so they're using Strike to take to that way people can pay with cash, but then they end up taking. So are some of these businesses doing all of their accounting solely in Bitcoin then?
No, not at all. So with I had just described Bitcoin out from Strike or Pouch, but there's also Bitcoin in. And when you receive a payment with Pouch in specifically, what happens is it is automatically converted to pesos for you as a service. So these vendors can make a Lightning invoice. The payer is paying with Bitcoin over Lightning rails, but then it is put into their account as pesos.
Yeah. So Lightning Rails, so just real and Lightning, of course, is just the protocol that's built on top of Bitcoin that makes transactions easier.
Correct. It
Yeah,
allows for that proverbial cup of
yeah,
coffee with Bitcoin.
yeah, yeah. Just to let people know, because I mean, not everybody out there knows exactly what we're talking about. I'm yeah, so I want to make sure everybody understands the Lightning Network is just the way we facilitate or you facilitate Bitcoin transactions, and it's setting up things like that. So yeah, so people end up, uh, how are the? Have you had any trouble with any of the authorities in the Philippines with this, or have any authorities given you trouble? Have American authorities given you
I
trouble?
no, I am not on the compliance side, but I
Yeah,
have not experienced any problems really. Of course, we have to play by their rules,
yeah,
but that's what everyone needs to do. And because we are connected with the Filipino banking system,
yeah,
it is a regulated system, and we are complying with all of that.
yeah. Is it? Are there a lot of taxes in the Philippines? I mean, sales tax, income tax, property tax, or what's the tax structure like in the Philippines?
That I could not answer you. I really don't. Um, you know, I couldn't tell you.
Uh, I assumed you might be paying taxes in the Philippines. I don't know since you've been living there for a while.
Yeah, there's taxes that are getting paid, but that this is not my area of expertise,
Okay.
so
Okay.
I just don't feel I can comment on it intelligently.
Yes. Oh, yes. And by the way, the Fountainhead Forum is not tax advice. The Fountainhead Forum is not legal advice. The Fountainhead Forum is not financial advice. Thank you. Anyway,
Oh, I
so
think you caught. I think you caught my drift. Thank you.
yeah, I just wanted to make sure I got that out there, but uh, cover our asses, so to speak. But yes, but anyway, is so you've got all these businesses. What kind of resistance are you getting? I mean, if businesses don't want to adopt Bitcoin, what is their concern? What is their reason for saying no?
As with all sales, the biggest thing to overcome is no action taken. There is just inertia to doing nothing that is difficult to overcome.
Yeah.
And I would say one of our biggest problems is getting access to power. So finding the person that can say yes to one of these proposals is really one of the most difficult parts of what we're doing.
So basically, you walk into the hotel and you talk to the hotel receptionist who has no authority to do this, and you want to talk to the general manager of the hotel or the owner of the hotel.
Correct. And so there is just a lot of work going on to get to the person that can say yes. They are hard to find, they are hard to reach, but when we reach them, we actually have a very good track record of getting them onboarded.
Yeah, and that's good. And often too, those people are usually really busy. You never know. That's another problem.
Mm-hmm.
That's why they have staff. Staff can handle this stuff, but often the staff doesn't know what you're talking about. So yeah, and business has always by its nature been conservative. I mean, business doesn't change unless it has to change. Unless if the attitude of we've always done it this way, so which is understandable, and often that
Yeah,
works.
that's that's what no action planned is. I mean, that is
yeah.
Yeah.
What have they said about taking Bitcoin? Are they pretty happy with it, or what have they found to be the benefits of taking Bitcoin? Has anybody left Bitcoin after taking it, or what?
Oh,
How's
yeah.
that
So
working?
people come and go. The bigger businesses, when they accept and they adopt a good training protocol so that their staff, as they come in and out, understand it, they tend to stick around,
Yeah.
especially because the tourists are going to be the driver for a lot of usage right now. And so the bigger businesses are take their training and education pretty seriously, so they have a better experience. The smaller businesses that we've signed up, we might sign them up, and train them, but a variety of factors will come in where they forget that they are accepting it or how to accept it because they don't get business frequently, and so there is some degradation of the smaller businesses. We make an effort to sweep the island and go to every business every month or two to refresh their training and either take them off the map if they are no longer interested, or just keep training.
Okay, that's certainly cool. So that's been so you go around and talk to them, and so what percentages? I mean, what's been your retention rate on this? Have they stayed, or what percentage have stayed? What percentage have left Bitcoin or left Pouch?
So our peak, we had 300 businesses signed up right at adopting Bitcoin in El Salvador, and then while I was there, there was a sweep of the island checking all of them, and I believe 50 small businesses had dropped out. These overwhelmingly were the ones that were far away from the tourist center, and we're just not seeing business, that didn't take training seriously or anything else. So those were all businesses that we had made in a big push before adopting Bitcoin. And talking to the other communities around the world, these are exactly the same dropouts that they are seeing also. So I don't really focus on the dropouts as much as the number that are solid, because those are the ones that really matter.
Yeah.
And I have about 100 definitely tourist-oriented businesses that are getting enough business and retraining that they are solid. And those are the ones that the tourists are most likely to encounter. The more adventurous tourists are going to go to the wet markets, the places that locals eat, and those are more of an adventure that, well, they accepted last time we swept the island. You see what you see. We're having a big retreat on the island at the end of March, where we're bringing a conference here. And so, of course, in preparation for the conference, we're going to do another sweep and make sure that anything on the map is good to go right before the conference. So we are planning that sweep so that everyone is recently trained when we have that happen.
Are we seeing are we seeing some Bitcoin tourism? I mean, people traveling to places where they can use Bitcoin just so they can use Bitcoin, and like maybe at Bitcoin Island or maybe at at Bitcoin Beach in El Salvador or something like that. I mean, is that becoming a phenomenon where people are going on Bitcoin tourism? And of course,
Absolutely.
yeah,
That's
yes,
why we chose Boracay, because it was already a tourist destination. So there's a good reason to come here. And then adding this on is making the difference for some people that are maybe already in the Philippines and they're choosing between Boracay and Palawan. Well, they're already Bitcoiners. Let's go there and check this out. I try and meet every tourist that I know about that's coming here specifically for Bitcoin. And then we get the accidental tourist that was already coming here for their own purposes. And when they get here, our office is very, very prominent. It has a giant Bitcoin on top. It is located on the other side of a small pond from the tourist district. And there is a big sign that says Boracay that you would take photos in front of. And when you take photos there, our giant Bitcoin is very visible in the background. So because of this, Bitcoiners that just happen to be here walk over to our office, see my phone number on the door, and give me a call.
So yeah, so where do most of the tourists come from? Do they come all the way from America? Or do they come from other? I suppose you probably get some China and Japan and Australia maybe too. But where do they come from?
Oh, it is everywhere. Now, of course, right now, and I think most of the time, the vast majority of tourists are going to be Filipino and Southeast Asian, simply because it's closer. You're just going to get more Filipino and Southeast Asian. But yes, you absolutely see Australians, Americans, Europeans, everywhere in the world.
Yeah, because you had mentioned also that and I looked it up, the only international flight that comes into Boracay is actually from Taipei, which would be Taiwan, of course. So obviously they're getting some tourism from Taiwan. Uh, so yeah, so uh, so how big's the organization over there in the Philippines? If they got a big office, do they got a lot of people working there, or how many people are there?
We're moving people here to make this our corporate headquarters, but right now I'm the only one on the island. This office was set up for when we were onboarding so many businesses. It was nice to have the visibility and the respectability that comes with an office, and just having somewhere as a home base right in the center of town was important for us.
Yeah, how big's the town?
I think there's 20,000 people on Boracay residents.
Okay, so That's the island? So they all live in the
Oh, I'm
town, or
sorry. It's 12,000 people.
okay, yeah. So anyway, so that sounds very interesting. So, what's the pouch? And this pouch app wallet is available on Android phones and Droid phones and Android phones and Apple phones. And is there a desktop app? And where else is it available besides those things, or just those things?
Yeah, it's on the two major mobile platforms. There is
Okay.
a web app, but that's not really what this is meant for.
Yeah, I've personally been resistant to do anything with finances on my phone, just because I know phones aren't nearly as secure as your regular desktop computer, even if you're browsing the web. But I don't know if that's a resistance you're getting or not. But yeah, what's it mostly? Is it programmed in Rust or Python, or what's the main languages with it? Can you tell me a little more about the tech specs on this, or not?
I'm not a developer, so
Yeah.
I don't recognize that as any of our languages, but I just
Okay.
can't speak on it because I'm not one of the developers.
Okay, I wasn't sure. Yeah, yeah, I knew you weren't a developer. I just wasn't sure how much you knew, because usually when you work in an environment like this, you got to learn some stuff. And you did mention you went to an engineering school, so
Yep, I'm
engineers.
a programmer, but a different flavor of programmer.
Yeah. Well, most engineer, anybody who works in any kind of engineering field, even if they're not working with computers, is usually a person who's pretty decent with computers to begin with. I mean, that's just the nature of the business. It's how it
Yeah,
works.
exactly.
Uh, what do you see for the future of Bitcoin and the future of other things out there right now with crypto, and the future of finance and economics in general right now?
So I can't speak to crypto because this is a Bitcoin only company,
Yeah.
but I just see Bitcoin with Lightning being adopted more and more as we go. We see more of these communities popping up. We're seeing some exciting remittance applications like us. We are connected directly with Strike in America, and that is really making the remittance much, much easier. While we could always go with Strike over Lightning in the past because they're both Lightning wallets, now this was just announced a couple of days ago. With Strike, they have send globally, and they have a bunch of countries. One of them is the Philippines. And what happens is Strike will query Pouch and say, what are the payment methods that you currently support? And we will list all of the e-wallets and all of the banks that we support. And that will be populated in their dropdown on Strike. The user will put in the information, hit go, and the money will go directly from their Strike account to, for instance, a BDO bank account in the Philippines.
Yeah. So one issue I think that's prevented a lot of people from maybe at least doing more with Bitcoin is it's still very easy to lose Bitcoin. I mean, if I send an email and type in a wrong letter, I'll get a message back saying your email cannot be delivered. Then you look at the blah 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 blah. But that doesn't happen with Bitcoin. Will
Um,
we ever get to something like that with Bitcoin, where it says, "Hey, your address is no good. We're sending it back"?
I believe we're there already in that there is a checksum that if you put in a bad Bitcoin address, it will not go.
That is absolutely positively fantastic. Thank you for telling us that. I think that's definitely been one barrier to entry on this.
Yeah.
Because I mean, it's been said that 5% or 10% of Bitcoin is lost. I don't know the exact numbers, but is that a fairly accurate statement or not? Or
It's very hard to tell because the difference between lost Bitcoin and a hardcore hodler is
yes,
very, very difficult to distinguish.
that's a good
However,
point. Yes,
and if we think about it, um, the assuming that there is some amount of Bitcoin that is indeed lost, and I believe that is fair. a lot of that would have been lost in the early days when Bitcoin essentially had no value. That was not that long ago that you could go to a Bitcoin faucet and get a
Yeah.
few free Bitcoin.
Yeah. And people would obviously not care as much. I mean, when Bitcoin was $5, it's like, oh, I lost 4 Bitcoin. So what? Now, I lose 4 Bitcoin. Oh no, I lost 4 Bitcoin. Definitely making a difference. That's good to know. The problem. So what?
Well, another analogy that I'd like to give
Yeah.
here is that gold is easy to lose. It is small, it is portable, yet
Yes.
we believe that the vast majority of gold that has ever been mined in human history is still in circulation.
Yeah. Gold. Yeah, you can lose gold too. You could be out on your boat and your gold falls into the ocean. It's the old joke about I lost my crypto in a boating accident. You could have a
Yeah.
boating accident, lose your gold too. Not to mention the other things. Do you have any preferences on hardware wallets? I mean, Trezor or Ledger?
I don't use either.
Okay.
So I don't really have an informed opinion on hardware wallets. I find different ways of doing cold storage that I prefer.
Oh yeah, and if you don't want to talk about that, that's fine. I just
Yeah.
thought it was interesting because if you
No,
give
I
out that
just
information, you're telling people how they can hack you.
well, no, it's just that I don't personally see a need for a hardware wallet. I can understand why other people do, but I understand the technicals of Bitcoin. I know how to do air gapped storage and coin control and all of those things. So I don't see a need for a hardware wallet.
Understand? Yeah.
Yep.
So, uh, have any predictions for the next? Where do you think? With the Bitcoin block halving coming up in the middle of 2024, which generally signals the bull runs, where do you think Bitcoin might be at the end of 2025?
Oh,
If you want to make
I
a
wouldn't be
prediction.
surprised by 100,000 US.
Yeah, that would be good. Although that would be pretty good. Although it wouldn't necessarily be as much as gains as possible. I don't know. I don't know if we're going to see the crypto gains as much as we used to, just because Bitcoin is getting more adapted out there. Where do you think? Is there any other place? We've talked about El Salvador a little bit. Do you know anything about the Central African Republic? Because that was another country that decided that Bitcoin is legal tender. But I have to tell you, I don't even know anybody who's ever visited that country. Do you know anything about that or not?
I am not particularly familiar with the Central African Republic. I have spoken with people that are associated with Bitnob, which is also similar uh, to us in that they are connected with Strike and allow the send globally feature. So, like in Strike right now, you can say send globally, and I think it's Nigeria, Kenya, and Ghana. You just give the phone number of the person and that money will go directly to them. So I've talked with some of the people there. I think a couple of them are going to be at our Bitcoin retreat. So I'm very
Yeah,
excited to hear about them.
yeah. Uh, have you been to any of the big Bitcoin conferences? Like, I went to the big one in Miami last year. Or I know there's also Bitcoin Latin America that was in Buenos Aires this last year. Been to any of those events or not? Any conferences you particularly go to?
I only have gone to adopting Bitcoin in El Salvador. I was asked as a speaker to talk about how we were able to onboard all of those businesses in such a short time.
Yep, that's good to know. Certainly. What's when you got on board some of these businesses? What is your strongest selling point in your event, and what really makes them want to say, "Yeah, I want to use this Bitcoin thing"?
It's absolutely the utility of it. that they can now accept payments from foreigners much easier. There's not really electronic means for foreigners to pay in the Philippines. The
Yeah.
dominant e-wallet here in the Philippines is Gcash, but as a foreigner, you cannot easily get one of these accounts. So they are familiar with the concept of e-wallets, and they know that about 20% of their sales on the island are coming through that e-wallet.
Yeah.
And everyone knows that the ATMs, which is the way that most of the foreigners are getting their money, is difficult to find and expensive. I believe the most you can get out at one time is $200, and it costs you about $5 to do that. And it can be very difficult to find one of these ATMs in the first place.
Yeah. Often that's a good point. With foreigners, credit cards generally charge what, like a 3% transaction fee, and there's other. I mean, what percentage would you say the fees are for these businesses that are using Bitcoin, or are
Uh,
there any
uh,
fees
for
at all?
For Bitcoin, there's no fees. Let me get back to that after saying I've heard from various businesses that they're paying anywhere from like 1.5 to 3% of their sales on credit cards to the
Yeah.
processing companies. Now, with Bitcoin, one of the selling points is that what you invoice is what you keep. So if you make an invoice for 1,000 pesos, when it is paid over the Bitcoin network, that is how much is going to appear in their pouch wallet. And then from there, they can spend it at other businesses. They can get it out through a variety of banks or payment service centers around the island, or just to that dominant e-wallet that I mentioned before. So they find that appealing.
That sounds very appealing. So, what do you think are some of uh, the potential problems or pitfalls that could come that could give that could maybe make Bitcoin adoption harder, or maybe corrupt Bitcoin? What do you think are what are the biggest threats to Bitcoin in the next 5 years or so?
Threats.
Threats, or snags, or trouble spots, or dilemmas, or problems that might
I
need
mean,
to be overcome.
I think Bitcoin is inevitable.
Yeah.
So I think whatever I could possibly list is going to be overcome.
Yeah.
So I don't see any existential threats at all. I can see that it's just going to take more time than we would like. I mean, I've been enjoying it very much that here on the island, I can live entirely on Bitcoin.
Yeah.
I
Well,
ha- I've gone to the ATM once since August because I needed to pay a government agency and I needed cash. But it is entirely possible to live on this island only on Bitcoin right now. So I feel like I'm living in the future here, and the future is bright. Governments and regulations can always stymie progress in any industry. So that is always a threat, but that is not a given that that is going to happen.
well, yeah, and governments really can only cause problems really with the on ramps to Bitcoin. I mean, once you're into the crypto ecosystem, or the Bitcoin ecosystem, there really isn't much that they can do, right?
Yeah, that's I think that's fair. I mean, Bitcoin was designed as a permissionless peer-to-peer money, and
Yeah.
it does exactly that.
And decentralized finance. And I mean, and the other important factor too is that you can't kick anybody off of Bitcoin. I mean, it was really interesting. I was reading this article about PayPal and what the PayPal founders envisioned, and now PayPal is completely the opposite of what they envisioned. I mean, it's PayPal's evil, just about as evil as they can be. I mean, there's really no way that Bitcoin can become evil, right?
I don't see it as
Yeah.
a threat at all of that. And yeah, I mean, I closed my PayPal account several months ago.
Yeah. And of course, PayPal also owns Venmo. And
I haven't used. I've been out of the country long enough that a lot of when I left, PayPal was really the only wallet that mattered. So
yeah,
the all of these others that have come in prominence in the last 3 years, I have not really any experience with them.
yeah, yeah. It's been very interesting to watch how tech has went from being the good guys to being the bad guys, and it's happened so quickly. So, what do you think? What do you think? What other what are there any problems in the Bitcoin community or the ecosystem that you think do need to be solved before we get mass adoption, or do you think all those problems have been solved?
I think usability for the masses
Yeah,
is definitely a thing. We have learned a lot as a software company from having Bitcoin Island here
yeah,
because it is a giant usability lab.
yeah.
I have been holding the hands of thousands of users here on the island. I see where they have problems, where they have misunderstandings, and so then we can bring that information back into the development to make sure the software is usable and understandable to the users.
Certainly. I mean, it took about 25 years of the internet to for the internet to exist before the internet really was going everywhere. Uh, do you think we're I mean, what do you think? Do you think we'll ever get to how soon it will be before we get the, as I like to call it, the AOL for Bitcoin? The American coin for Bitcoin, which, and of course, AOL was when everybody got on the internet. I mean,
Yes, I
a lot of
remember those
a
days.
lot of people it was their first internet provider.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely, it was. I used it at some point myself.
I
I mean,
tried it
I
for a minute
started.
and I hated it. I
I
started
started
I
with
started with CompuServe.
I started with local BBSs.
Oh yes, bulletin board systems. Yeah,
Yeah.
early '90s. Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. Bulletin board systems. Those were what, using a 1200 baud modem.
Yeah. With FidoNet and everything else.
Oh jeez. Yeah.
Yeah.
Who was your IP? Who was your internet provider then? Or were you
Uh,
just dialing into bulletin boards? You
some.
would dial phone numbers directly into bulletin board systems,
Yeah, you did.
and then you would just chat on the bulletin boards. I was never on bulletin boards, but I knew what they were.
So yeah, you would post the message, and then I believe over FidoNet, the messages would then be relayed from one bulletin board to another. So
Yeah,
you might post something, and it would take time to propagate across the entire network. In a
yeah.
lot of ways, it sounds a lot like a Bitcoin transaction, only much, much slower.
Oh yes. Yeah. Dial up, and of course you using the same phone line as you used for your landline phone. And hearing the sound of a modem. It was a Usenet. Were you ever on Usenet? Usenet was around then too, right? Yeah,
Usenet was around then also, but
yeah,
like most people, did not discover Usenet until college.
yeah, yeah. Well, college. Well, yeah. If you were in college in there in 90 or 91, there was a good chance you were on email and things like that, because a lot of people, that was where a lot of the early email adopters were. Uh, it's then it
I
got
remember in 94, 95,
yeah,
there almost no one was using email at the university. It existed, but it was not being utilized in classes or
okay, yeah,
expected that you
yeah,
would use it.
yeah. What you don't want to say what university this was?
Oh no, it was Michigan Tech University. It doesn't
Oh,
matter.
Michigan Tech. Okay, yeah. That's up north. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, Michigan Tech. Okay, yeah. Some were more ahead of than others. I I got on email in late '95, and I got on CompuServe, and that was when CompuServe was still using the numerical email addresses. It's so wild to think that was, and ultimately that's what I think hurt CompuServe, was they never got away from the, on a lot of the other online services you could, create a username, but not on CompuServe. You just got stuck with these numbers.
Yeah, so you were talking about the kind of the killer app, the AOL, And
Yeah.
I believe that companies like Strike, Coin Corner, Pouch, BitNob are those killer apps.
Yeah. Yeah. There
I've
could be.
been, yeah, I mean, I've been teaching people here every day how to use it. Just yesterday, I brought one of our business owners to her first self custody storage on chain.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So it took an hour. She took notes. I left for a walk on the beach while she got her 12 words, wrote them down, and hid them, and then we got her on chain. And I proved to her that she could move off of chain to Pouch, which in effect would be selling her Bitcoin. And I showed her how her daily sales, if she wanted to, she could uh, bring them on chain for her long-term storage.
Yeah. This is and if you don't want to answer this question, that's
Oh,
fine. What do you think is the best way to keep your 12 words?
there are so many different ways
Yeah.
of
But you hear so
doing
many
that.
stories of people losing their 12 words and therefore they lose their Bitcoin or lose all their crypto. I mean,
I mean, there's so many options out there. I have a background in metalwork, so I certainly know how to stamp or weld onto metal or anything like that. But I mean, just writing it down in a variety of different places is
yeah.
is probably enough for a lot of people. I think about when I was cleaning out my grandma's attic, I found, the family Bible where, all the lineage is written down and handed down from generation to generation.
Oh,
There
yeah.
were inscriptions in pencil that were dated from the 1800s that were still completely legible after 200 years,
Oh, wow.
right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, it, this is not that difficult, and people write down things like that and can hide it relatively easily. There's great books out there on how to hide anything that are
Yeah.
great about how to create little hidey holes. The
Yeah.
people that are more into home building and home repair on their own, drill a hole in your drywall, drop it down in there and repair and paint. Is
Yeah.
anyone going to find that?
Yeah. That creates another that also brings up another question too though. Let's imagine, that I'm in a car accident or I'm suddenly incapacitated or I get killed. How would my family find that?
Well, there's a variety of ways. One that I advocate that I have not yet seen is from cryptography, the concept of a one-time pad. For those of you that don't know, you can combine two letters. Let's say A plus A equals B. A plus B equals C. A plus or B plus B equals D. Right. So you could imagine a system like that, right?
Yes.
And if I take my secret words and then I randomly generate letters from the alphabet, write them down on playing cards, shuffle, draw a card, write it down, and do that a bunch of times, I've got random letters. Maybe grab it from a Scrabble box where you have one of each letter. Now, when you combine your secret with that random letter, there is no way to go backwards. So one person holds the random letters that you generated, one person owns the encrypted version of that. Until those two people get together, neither one of them can reconstruct your words.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So that's called a one-time pad. That is cryptologically proven to be unbreakable. During wartime, this was very common that they would have, the secret letters. The receiver and the sender would have the same set of letters. One would encrypt it with those letters. Then you could send that encrypted version out over radio waves. Anyone in the world could hear them, but without that one-time pad on the other side to receive it and undo the math, no one could read it. And so if you give one half of these stamped in metal to two completely different people that don't know each other, but both would appear at your funeral, there you go.
Yeah, very interesting stuff. So, do you have any opinions on the fiasco with Sam Bankman-Fried?
Oh, I am glad to see that that people that allegedly are committing fraud are captured and prosecuted.
Yeah, yeah, it definitely
The
seems to
fact that
be.
he was involved with Bitcoin and crypto really doesn't matter. Fraud is fraud,
Yeah,
whatever uh, whatever they're doing. This could have just as well been selling bridges that do not exist. It could have been many other things. So I think it actually has very little to do with Bitcoin or crypto at its heart.
yes, it's just interesting how he had kind of become the darling, and then he ends up being a complete, uh, a complete fraud. And just it's amazing, how this all. It's be. I wonder if he's going to do any time for this, and it's interesting too. But how this. Do you think more and more Bitcoin development is going to move out of America, perhaps because of all the regulatory environment? It's
I'm not
because
sure if it would be for the regulatory environment or if it would be for cost savings
yeah,
or getting closer to your customers.
yeah,
Right. I mean,
well,
those are all reasons. I mean, this is a global phenomenon. There is no particular reason that it needs to be American centric.
yeah. But I think also Bitcoin is going to go for the path of least resistance. And I mean, Elizabeth Warren, tried to put out that thing where she wanted everybody to have to register their hardware wallets and other things like that. I mean, it seems like to me, often the revolutionaries have to go outside of the country that they're trying to overthrow before they overthrow it. I mean, I think there's definitely some inevitability here, but I do wonder if it's going to be easier to work on this outside of America just because of all the regulatory environment. I know you'll probably hate me for saying his name, but Roger Ver gave up his American citizenship, and I think we may see that with other people in the world of Bitcoin doing that as
Hmm.
well.
Yeah, I mean, I think development's going to happen wherever the talent is.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, the talent can be the talent doesn't have to be located. The talent can be anywhere because you can send your programs and stuff all over the world. It's just where these companies are going to headquarter themselves.
Right. Since our major market is the Philippines, it of course makes sense
Yeah.
that our offices and the vast majority of our development is here in the Philippines.
Yeah. What other places in the world are becoming Bitcoin havens?
Well, I mean, it goes without saying, El Salvador for sure. We
Yeah.
actually have some of our tech support out of El Salvador, partially because of time zones. It allows us to have someone that's working normal hours
Yeah.
support the nighttime here in the Philippines. So that's something that we do. I've heard a lot of good things about Madeira.
Madeira.
Uh, yeah, that is the Free Madeira project. It's
Okay.
an
Yeah.
island. It's semi. I don't really understand the political status of it, but it's more of an autonomous zone, I believe.
Oh yeah. Free Madeira. Free Madeira. Yeah. 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 I
Yeah.
see where that
So
is.
uh, they seem to be doing a great job. There's a community growing up in Texas that
Yeah.
I've spoken at before. We've got a community in Switzerland. If people that are interested in this go to btcmap.org, there is a list of communities, and yeah, it says they've got 115 different communities similar to what we have here on Bitcoin Island, Boracay.
Yeah.
And if
Free.
we look, go ahead.
I was going to say free Madeira is free Madeira if you're wanting to go that, and then there's BTC map. I know you talked about Texas. Austin has a lot of there's a lot of meetup groups here in Austin. There's what they call the Bitcoin Commons, and they have probably they have a Lightning developers meetup. They have lots of different meetups there. We have a group called Cryptonomics. There's also just weekly crypto. There's Crypto Mondays. There's a weekly meetup on Sunday as well. There's a lot here in Austin.
Yeah. Like I said, I gave a remote presentation to the meetup group there.
Yeah. Sorry, I missed that. Yeah, I know. We had is it Saifedean Ammous here too a while ago. Also, he was talking at the Bitcoin Commons. The Austrian economist.
Oh yeah. I was just a little bit jealous that we haven't been able to get him out here yet.
Yeah, well, I'm sure it's going to probably take some expense too because you got to fly him there, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it's a pretty long flight from America. When I came back from El Salvador, my first layover was in Texas somewhere.
Yeah, and I went to Bitcoin Miami last year, which is certainly worth attending. I actually did volunteer, so that was one way to get the free admission. Although you got to work it off too. But if you work a couple days in the setup, though, that means you can do less in the real conference. Yeah, what do you think about people like Michael Saylor and Lynn Alden? We definitely got some good people here getting into the community. It's
I think both of them are brilliant, and I think they are excellent spokespeople for the movement. I try and listen to everything that both of them put out.
Yeah, Mark Moss is another good one. Yeah, there's definitely going to be. Oh yeah, so if people want to learn more about your conference, where do they go?
If you go to pouch.ph, across the menu bar, there's a variety of options. One of them is retreat, and the other one is Boracay. So the retreat, of course, tells you about our event and allows you to RSVP. The sooner you RSVP, the better. The prices do go up periodically because it's just a lot easier for us to plan when we have people that have shown a serious interest in coming by putting money down. And you can pay by sats, of course, to get in. And then there is the Boracay link on pouch.ph, and that tells you all the information about getting to the island, how to make hotel reservations before you come. If you're a whale, it gives you the information on where to park your yacht, and I'm serious about that. We do have that on the island, and things like that. So all the information, what you need to do before you come, is on that island page.
Yeah.
Basically, you're going to want to reserve your hotel, and you're going to want to pay for a tour operator. They just smooth it going from the airport. They will pick you up, bring you to the ferry port. You will skip all of the lines and go on the next ferry that is available. On the other side, they have a cart waiting for you that will bring you to your hotel. It is well worth the tiny expense to have that all taken care of.
Yeah, if somebody's listening to this and they don't know anything about Bitcoin, where would you tell them to get started to learn about Bitcoin?
Okay, so there is very first ones. That depends. What is it they are trying to learn? Are they coming at it from technical? Do they want to be an investor? I mean, there's so many aspects to it that I need to kind of have an idea what they want out of it. Eventually, they will go down the rabbit hole and learn it all.
Yeah. maybe the best thing to tell them to do is just go to a meetup. I wasn't sure if there was any book or anything like that. Maybe a Mark Moss's
So
Communist Manifesto. I mean, what other any other people have influenced your economic or political outlook besides McWilliams?
you broke up. I couldn't hear that question.
Anybody influence your political outlook or your economic outlook besides Peter McWilliams?
Oh, Peter McWilliams, Harry Brown, of course. How I Found
Yep.
Freedom in an Unfree World. He was a libertarian candidate for president a couple of times.
Oh yes, I know who that is.
I forget who wrote the book, but Economics in One Lesson. So
Henry Hazlitt.
The what?
Henry Hazlitt.
Yep, Henry Hazlitt. Of course, I think I see that this is called The Fountainhead. So Ayn Rand is definitely a good place to read.
Yeah, Ayn Rand. It's a very curious thing I've noticed is that I remember back in the 90s, people who were into Ayn Rand were all about getting on the internet, getting on email, and getting on, because it was the future. And yet there's very little interest in Bitcoin among those people, and I don't get it. But oh well.
Something I noticed is, for reasons I have yet to understand, a lot of objectivists were hostile to the Libertarian Party, and I never understood that. I did not see that at all.
Well, the Bitcoin has nothing to do with the Libertarian Party. That's a completely different thing. Although there's certainly people in the Libertarian Party who are sympathetic to Bitcoin, but still, yeah, I don't know. It's kind of in its own little world. I mean, I a lot of times what happened, with 2020 and the coronavirus and nonsense made me realize we have to completely overhaul this system one way or another. And that got me into Bitcoin because I saw Bitcoin as the best hope. I don't believe we're ever going to have a gold standard and have a democracy. I don't believe we're ever going to have capitalism and have a democracy. So we've got to create an economic and financial system that cannot be screwed up by the masses, basically, because they will screw it up if they can.
Yeah, by the looters, if I can use that terminology, right?
Yeah. So tell me, we haven't gotten much into this. How's life in the Philippines for you?
Oh, it's incredible. I mean, I could leave at any point, and I have chosen not to on several occasions. If that tells you anything, don't listen to what people say, listen to what they do. And I'm here, right?
Well,
so
for a month, I mean, it sounds like the cost of living is pretty much. So I mean, what kind of place do you have, and what's your cost? What kind of place do you have, and what are you paying for it, if you don't mind me asking?
Oh, no, not at all. So I'm living on the island here, and the island is definitely more expensive than a lot of the rest of the Philippines. So to give the low end, when I was on the beach north of Manila in a very small isolated community, I believe I was paying 400 US a month for a beach view apartment with a kitchen, living room, bedroom. And as soon as I walked out, I was toes in the sand. I think that I was living well for under $1,200 a month there.
Okay.
So and then just yesterday, I sent some Bitcoin over here, and I believe it was about $800 to pay the rent and utilities on this place. It is much bigger. It's got a pool, big bedroom, big living room, 2 bath, and it's about a 2-minute walk from the ocean.
Yeah.
For about 800.
And you've got a house, yeah. Anything else you want to say? I mean, what's the social life like over there?
So yeah, I've got a lovely Filipina girlfriend, so that is definitely one of the bonuses to living here. Here, especially on Bitcoin Island, there are so many restaurants and some of the best food in the Philippines. You get business owners from around the world that come and open up their businesses here. So you've got a variety of pallets out there for you. So that's that. It can be a little bit challenging if you are trying to source specific kinds of food because it is an island and there's not necessarily as much demand for whatever it is that you're looking for. But everything is available if you get embedded in the company and know, or into the community, and learn where to find it. So, for instance, when I was in that smaller community, bread is not particularly important in the Filipino cuisine. And so essentially, there was Wonder Bread as the only kind of bread available. But as I was in the community longer, and I would ask the restaurants where they got the good bread that they were serving, and it turns out that there was a German guy who enjoyed baking bread. He built himself a brick oven in his backyard and he baked for all the locals. You just put in your order and, on Saturdays you go pick it up. So as you were lamenting, the death of small business, it's alive and well here. And so it was just a matter of being in a community long enough to know that these things exist.
Yeah. So yeah, you mentioned the social life. It sounds like the women. It sounds like they have really great women. I mean, I hear so many stories about men finding women in the Philippines and bringing them home or whatever. Or in your case, you're staying there.
Oh, yeah, that is absolutely a trope and a stereotype that has a lot of evidence here. As my lady and I walk down the beach, you see a lot of, foreign men with their Filipina on their arm. You see that quite a bit.
Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
people in general here are just very pleasant and friendly people. It's easy to focus on the male female relationships here,
Yeah.
but everyone is super friendly here. I am not exaggerating when I say you hear people singing in the streets here. That is absolutely something that happens. People decide to start singing and they do.
Yeah, if an American wanted to go to the Philippines, what would they have to do? Is it pretty easy or hard to get a visa, even if they wanted to go for citizenship? Have you thought about
They
that?
don't to come to the Philippines. U.S. citizens do not need a visa. They get a visa on entry, and that is good for 30 days. At the international airports, you can immediately extend it to 60 days at most international airports. So upon landing, you can get 60 days. At that point, tourist visas, the first renewal, I believe, is for 30 days after the initial 60. And then after that, at the small branches, you can get 2 months at a time. At the large branches in Manila, you can get 6 months at a time. And
Yeah.
that can go on for 3 years. At the 3 year mark, you're going to need to leave, but you can come back immediately the next day. So
Well, can
that's
you get?
called a visa run, and that's common in a lot of countries, not just the Philippines.
Have you tried to get residency or anything like that? I mean, is that how
No,
easy or
I
hard
I
is that?
have I have not. There are a variety of different ways of getting residency here more permanently. If you're of a certain age, I believe 62, but I think it might actually be much younger. There is a special retirement visa that is available. If you are willing to believe, I believe, put 20,000 US into a special bank account, then that proves to them that you are not going to become destitute and you can get a special resident visa that way.
Yeah.
There are a variety of other programs like that.
Yeah.
It's my
And
understanding that the Philippines is the only country in the world that has a dedicated government office that is there to help foreigners get residency in the Philippines.
oh wow. Okay, you talked about food, and I don't know. You probably maybe have a cleaning lady or something like that too. I suppose, right? Or not?
We try. I tell my lady that we need to get one. We'll get one, and then, you know, she doesn't come back. So
Okay.
finding a reliable one here on the island has been a challenge. In other places that I've been, I managed on the first try to
Yeah.
find someone that was with me the entire time.
Uh, Considering all that, is it easy or hard, say, to get, like somebody to do maintenance work, or if you had a car to do car work or something like that, or are
Oh
you
no, that would be pretty trivial
okay?
to find someone willing to do that kind of
Yeah,
thing.
and all and do it sounds like you might have enough space too, where you could even put out a garden and be in a fairly tropical place. It's probably pretty easy to grow tomatoes or something like that too, I suppose, right? Or
Oh yeah, yeah. I may have given the mistaken impression that I'm in a house. We're actually in a condo, or yeah, a condo
okay, a condo,
building.
yeah,
But we were also looking at houses, and yeah, there's fruit trees already growing there.
yeah,
You can see where someone in the past had put down vegetable gardens. There were already chickens running around in the yard. So
yeah,
yeah, all of that, especially if you're living out in the provinces. The
yeah.
provinces are basically anywhere that is not Manila, and there are plenty of expats that have come here and done a long-term lease on a patch of land and have a house. Some of them actually have helpers that live in part of the house and take care of the day-to-day needs of the house.
Oh yeah. And finally, although obviously, if you talk about some retired people, what's healthcare like there?
So yeah, there is some world class healthcare here. Um, I've had to go in for a minor surgery, and it was a hospital that I thought matched up with anything I had seen in the states.
And the cost was probably what, 1/10 of the states, or
It's hard to tell because in America there's the insurances and
oh yeah,
and all of that, so you don't know what your operation cost. But this minor operation that I had, it didn't even make it worth it for me to try and fill out uh, uh, a claim on my American insurance. It didn't even come close to the deductible.
it's hardly, and of course you mentioned you don't have a car there, so you more or less get by on uh, you know transportation. I suppose you maybe go to other places. You might use Ubers or something like that.
Yeah,
But
when you get into Manila and big cities, the Uber equivalent is available. Couple
yeah,
bucks to go anywhere.
yeah.
Anywhere
What's the Uber
reasonable.
equivalent?
The Uber equivalent is called Grab, and I think there's another one, but I can't remember because Grab is what I downloaded first and it worked. So
Grab. I've not heard of that. Is that just GRAB?
yeah, it's Grab Cab. I think was the original name, and it's been shortened.
Oh yeah. Grab, the everyday everything app. Yeah. So okay, Grab. Yeah.
And now Grab has gotten into financial services. They've gotten into food delivery, and so they do a lot of things like that.
Okay, that's cool. Yeah, yeah, yeah. You mentioned Grab. I know there's a. That's not one I've used, but yeah, there's usually have to. Yeah, there's a lot of different of those. Uber might be the only one that seems somewhat worldwide, but there's a lot of other ones that only go to some countries. There's you know Bolt in Eastern Europe and Cabify in some of the Spanish countries, and yeah. So well, you got anything else you want to say before we go here?
No, I just hope that when your listeners come to Boracay, that they go to the office and find the contact information and have a beer with me.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, yeah. So that'll be cool. Yeah, I hope it works out too. Yeah, it's been a very interesting conversation. I certainly am interested to hear about how Bitcoin is spreading around the world. I hope we can, make that happen sooner than later. But yeah, it's been a very interesting talk. So I'm going to hit like on the video. Please subscribe, and of course go buy my novel Escape from the Village. I'm Chris Baker. This is and we will stop the recording now. So Thank you for coming on, Bill. It's been a great
Oh,
conversation. So, yeah.
yeah, thank you. I don't get to talk about objectivism very often, so I would that was a nice
Yeah.
thing to be able to add
Yeah.
in there. So,
Were you ever, I should say, were you ever involved with organized objectivism or like Ayn Rand
yeah,
students?
it was on the college campus, but there seemed to be strife that I did not understand between the libertarians and the objectivists.
Yeah,
So,
there's been a lot of that. It's only gotten worse. And some of the people like ARI actually bought into some of this COVID nonsense, which just absolutely amazed me. I couldn't believe it, but COVID broke a lot of people, unfortunately.
I think
Yeah,
my experience of it is so much different than everyone else's. I was drinking mojitos on a private beach.
yeah,
Um, so like I think this is a world experience that I will just not share
yeah,
with the rest of the world. I mean, being
yeah,
an introvert and having a private beach, awesome.
yeah. Is Ayn Rand have any traction in the Philippines or
Oh no, no.
okay?
I you don't I think so. One of the things that happens here is there's informal book exchanges
Yeah,
at the different hotels. Whatever people were reading on the flight over, they just drop off and then they pick up whatever's left. And I do believe I saw Fountainhead in one of the hotels. I
yeah,
was tempted to pick it up, but I've already read it. So
yeah. I was traveling last year, and I left some books at a hostel, largely because I had nothing but a carry on. But you didn't want to carry around a bunch of stuff. But I didn't need those tour books anymore. So yeah, so that's good to know. Well, okay, again, please hit like on the video, subscribe, and go buy my novel. This is Chris Baker and the Fountainhead Forum, and we are out.